Okay, we are still not live. There seems to be a problem, but okay. Okay, we can start now. Good evening, dear friends and comrades. Welcome to our event about the effects of state violence against women. I welcome you all on behalf of the Kurdish Women's Office for Peace, Jenny. Thanks to our panelists and all participants for joining us today at this event that we have organized to mark the 11th anniversary of the murder of our friends Sakine Cansız, Fidan Doğan, and Leyla Şaylemez. They were murdered on the 9th of January 2013 by order of the Turkish Secret Services. It was a targeted attack on the Kurdish women's movement and the achievements of the women's movement. And the Kurdish community is still demanding justice today because there have been no consequences until today. And on Saturday, for example, tens of thousands of people came to Paris to commemorate our comrades and to demand justice. And with this event, we wanted to make visible the systematic level of femicide and patriarchal violence, because as we know, femicide and violence against women doesn't only happen in relationships, in the private sphere, not only in marriage or in the family, but also in the context of state violence and wars. And many Kurdish women, for example, who fought for freedom were taken from us by state violence, by the police, by armies, by fascist and right-wing groups, and in wars and conflicts. And states cause wars, conflicts, and suffering. And in this context, women suffer and are affected disproportionately. And this is what we want to discuss with our panelists today. Our first speaker is Nilüfer Koç. She is the spokesperson of the Foreign Relations Commission of the Kurdish National Congress. Hi, Nilüfer. I would also like to welcome Mahtab Mahbub, who is a feminist activist and translator and spokesperson for the Iranian Democratic Platform. Hi, Mahtab. Thanks for joining us today. I also welcome Soreti Kadir, who is an Oromo activist and storyteller, and Fida Alzanin, who is a Palestinian activist and also a gender studies researcher. Thank you all for your time and for joining us today. This event will be streamed live and all participants can ask their questions in the YouTube chat. And yes, if there are no further questions, I think we can start our event. I would ask you, Nilüfer, to start. As I said, the reason for our event is the triple femicide committed against Sakine Cansız, Fidan Doğan, and Leyla Şaylemez 11 years ago. The Kurdish women's movement speaks of a targeted attack on the women's movement, and they speak of a state femicide.
Seninki şarjı ne? iPhone. Samsung. Ama yes.
Sorry? I think
there's a technical intervention.
Somebody needs to mute themselves. Please, all participants, can you stay on mute? Thank you. Nilüfer, the Kurdish women's movement speaks of a targeted attack on the women's movement and a state femicide committed against our comrades Sakine Cansız, Fidan Doğan, and Leyla Şaylemez. What exactly happened back then, and in which political phase did it happen, and why did it happen? So what is the background of this attack against our three comrades, and why did the state attack these women? Nilüfer, please have the floor. Thank you.
Thank you, Helen, and thank you to Jenny for organizing this meeting. Let me first commemorate Sakine Cansız, Fidan Doğan, and Leyla Şaylemez, who have been murdered on the 9th of January 2013 in Paris on the daylight. And also commemorate Sevi, Pakize, and Fatma, who have been killed by Turkish military forces on the 4th of January 2016 in the Kurdish city of Silopi. And I will also commemorate Rosa Luxemburg. She was murdered on the 15th January in Berlin. So as you see, January is a bloody month for women, all the women who have been active in politics or in leading position in social revolutionary processes. And the first we experienced was on the 9th of January 2013 in Paris, in the center of Europe. And I think the clear purpose of the murdering was to prevent further improvement of the Kurdish women's movement, because as you might know, there was a radical shift in the Kurdish national movement, learning from the experiences of other revolutionary movements, and saying total liberation or social liberation need firstly the liberation of women, which is a vital structure of the Kurdish paradigm, saying without liberation, freedom of women, no freedom is possible in any society. This is the key line of the Kurdish movement or the Kurdish revolution. And Sakine Cansız is one of the first women who have been participating in the 70 years in creating or founding the Kurdish freedom movement, organized by the Kurdistan Workers' Party, PKK. She's our first so far. She is the beginning of the history of modern Kurdish women's movement. And all of us who have been joining this idea of free women have been so far learning from her. And I think choosing Sakine Cansız, murdering her, is a message given to all of us. Give up this idea that you as women will be the key players in the century of the 21st century, because this is the approach of Kurdish women's movement, saying the 21st century will be our century. We will take the right to self-determination, not just for the Kurds, but generally. And I think this approach, this decision was right, because we are seeing now that today, in mid of the Third World War, violence against women, whether physical or structural, is increasing everywhere in the world in different forms, but particularly in our region of Middle East, militarism is vital. It's a daily part of our life. And against this, in the last 30 years, struggle the Kurdish movement, women's movement, founded by Sakine Cansız, believe that peace must be our duty as women, and we are responsible to change first our societies. If we describe ourselves as the anti-capitalist, that means internally we have to defeat patriarchy, which is the mindset of capitalism, or later on the creation of the state. So if you are against every kind of oppression which is produced by power organization like the states, based on the mindset of patriarchy, then you need to create your own alternative. So the Kurdish women's movement, therefore, have been organizing as a grassroots organization, organizing women in every field of life, not just in politics, even in case of self-defense, because we are in a war zone in Middle East, and also having our own political party, Kurdish Women's Political Party, Kurdish Women's Army, and then several umbrella organizations which bring all the women from different classes and educational level together. So I would say we created the world of women in Kurdistan. And I think murdering Sakine Cansız, by murdering her was the sign was given, or the message was given, give up this idea. So because when we look in the 19th and 20th century, most of the struggles have been whether class-orientated or ethnical or nationalistic ideas. And then the third wave of new struggle or revolution in this century will be led by women, because neither the class struggle nor the establishment of nation states as a desire of self-determination of oppressed people in the 70s have been guaranteeing freedom of women. So then the last stage is, or the last level is then if class struggle doesn't mean is the only guarantee for women's liberation or the creation of nation state as a result of popular revolutions, then there must be another way. And during the whole processes of struggling for freedom, one vital part of the society have been also described as a second class even during the revolutions. And I think the Kurdish women's movement, particularly Sakine Cansız, have been taking lessons from the experiences of other revolutions. And that's why I say ours have to be very different, in radical forms, very different. And we have been the first victims in history of patriarchy. So the main contradiction in human history is the contradiction between men and women. So men became the first class and women the second, and this is the history of 5,000 years of oppression, of discrimination of women. And later on, this form of oppression and discrimination turned to a mindset which we call it patriarchy. And to keep patriarchy as a center of power, then ideas of state as an organization have been built in the last 5,000 years. And women have been always in opposition to these structures. So they kept still part of matrilinear societal elements, particularly in our region, like in Kurdistan, but in many places of Middle East, we still have values. When you look deeper, you will see matriarchal cultural values, because states in our region don't have long history like in Europe. So we kept many of these values. So we are now updating all these values, which means that women are more able for communal life and more able for creating values of communities. And this is with these values, we can create our alternative to the patriarchal exploitation, colonialization, whatever it's happening today. And I think this is the reason why the Turkish army particularly is fearing the power of Kurdish women. So we have, I can say clearly that we achieved the level of being autonomous organized. So we have all the instruments which can defend us against any kind of patriarchal intervention, whether politically, culturally, or in case of defense. So we are well equipped, I would say. And this is the character of the Kurdish movement. Actually, the Kurdish revolution is it's by same called female revolution, a revolution led by women. This is a first as its kind, and the targeting, murdering of women like Sevi, Pakize, Fatma in this month a few years ago, and also Sakine and also Rosa Luxemburg in Berlin, is saying women, your role is limited to the orders which is given by state or at home domestically by men. So we crossed the line, actually, women who are active in politics with self-confidence and organized, because our struggle is organized struggle. And as such, we are a power of women, and crossing the lines created by patriarchal state. And that's why if they are not able to silence us with their argumentations or using religiousness, in our case Islam, or in other cases Christianity or Judaism, which all three have been elements of patriarchy, strong values of patriarchy, particularly in Kurdistan in the last 22 years since the government of Erdogan is in power. What they did was using mosques and sending imams to the Kurdish region, and these have been praying or praising the men and bringing back the process of housewifeification in Kurdistan, saying all the women who went to the streets or participating in politics, they will land in the hell. So, and this was a kind of struggle against misusing Islam. I won't say this is Islam, but as a state used Islam, particularly by the Turkish regime. And I think they couldn't achieve this by using this kind of arguments from Quran, from the Holy Book of Islam. And after all this, they haven't been able to convince through manipulation, through digital media or TV channels, whatever. What they did was then, okay, if we can't convince them by soft power, we will use that hard power, which means murdering them. And the beginning was with murdering political active women like Sakine Cansız. And then later on, many of leading women in Turkish occupied part of Kurdistan. So I think it's ideology. Every attack on women is patriarchal based, means it's ideological attack, whether it's domestically or state made by state. Every attack on women, because of their gender identity, is ideological patriarchal attack. And I think now we see, even particularly in the last 2 months, when the war between Hamas and Israel started, again, the pictures they showed about women victimized part of the society, using pictures of women for clarifying their brutality. We know these pictures also from Rwanda, from Congo, and from other places of the world, showing women just as victims. But who made the women to victims are those who are using these arguments by saying. We experienced also in 2014 when the Islamic State as the new proxy, and I must say the patriarchal war against women have been changing its forms and instruments since the Taliban came to power in Afghanistan, or created in Afghanistan. So the so-called green belt, using Islam by organizing radical forces as proxies, and what they do is attacking women. We experienced this in 2014 in Kurdistan of Syria and Iraq, when they came to occupy our country. The first thing what they did was kidnapping, raping women, slaughtering women. So I think Turkey was behind all of this, because we know after assassination of Sakine Cansız and other comrades in Paris, they couldn't achieve their goal. What they did was then a new wave of violence through the Islamic State, ISIS, and they haven't expected that the Kurdish Women's Army, YPJ, would prevent them and defeat them. So that's the second wave. We overcome the second threat after the assassinations in Paris. And now it's a time when they are now, for example, burning the bodies of killed female fighters in the mountains to threaten and scaring the freedom fighters, female freedom fighters, abusing their bodies. They're already killed, and the other thing is imprisoning thousands of politically active women. So the state is insisting in deactivating leading figures in the Kurdish politics, female figures in the Kurdish politics, whether by killing or by arresting. And in the last 10 years, the imprisonment of female politicians increased in Turkey, particularly in Kurdish part of Turkish occupied part of Kurdistan. And the other part is also attacking the infrastructure of life in Syrian part of Kurdistan, Rojava, because it's a women-led new form of democracy in northern part of Syria. So I would say we are challenged by the highest level of patriarchy represented by the Turkish president of Erdogan today, and he's trying to spread the mentality of patriarchy by covering with religion to other places in our region of Middle East.
Thank you, Nilüfer. for your insights and for your contribution. Thank you very much. I think it is very important to remember all the women, all the fighting women who are fighting for their freedom and to continue their struggle. You said that the 21st century will be the century of women's liberation, and we can see a lot of struggles for women's liberation in the world in these years. A year ago, a revolution was started in Iran as well. The slogan Jinjian Azadi, which was also shouted by the Kurdish women's movement after these femicides in Paris happened, also became important in the protests in Iran after Jina Amini was killed by the morality police in Iran. And I would like Mahtab to tell us more about this. How and why does the Islamic regime target women? And what have women achieved in their struggle over the past year, and what state repression do they face? Mahtab, please have the floor.
Hello, I would like to thank Jenny for the invitation, and such an honor to speak along Nilüfer, Fida, and Sorati. I would like always, it's absolutely empowering to start with Jinjian Azadi, a slogan that, as you said, belongs to the Kurdish women movement and has traveled from Bakur and Rojava to Rojava. And then from there, it has united all the people who seek freedom, dignity, and right to self-determination in what is today called Iran. A slogan that reminded us that a nation cannot be free until its women are free. I would be here talking, when I mention women, I mean every person who identifies not as a man, so every woman or non-binary or queer person, anybody who is oppressed because of their gender or sexual orientation. So as Nilüfer said, the states are patriarchal institutions, organizations, and systems, and gender violence is built into their structures and institutions. In Iran, especially, a state legal system influenced by norms and dominant beliefs. Again, as Nilüfer said, in our region, it would be Islam as a religion that states actually refer to for their for exercising that kind of patriarchal norms that they rely on to control women and women's bodies. Political power has traditionally been concentrated in male-dominated structures, even when women, and this is also what we have seen in Iran, that women who belong to the conservative forces of the government, even when they come to the power, they just reproduce the already existing decision-making processes. In Iran, control over female body is in many areas of life institutionalized, and various forms of violence, including legal, physical, and structural, are exercised to maintain this control, which we can see in the case of compulsory hijab very visibly. Military and security apparatus of the state also reflects patriarchal structures, with men predominantly occupying key roles. Militarization has perpetuated gender violence both within military institutions and in the broader society affected by this conflict, which is how the state in Iran tried to manage the situation months after the Jina revolution ignited in areas such as Kurdistan, such as Baluchistan, in what is called margins, quote unquote, which showed the maximum resistance against the regime. So through militarization, when the focus goes on security, it is really difficult to talk about issues of gender equality or women's rights. Many activists use the term gender apartheid to describe the situation where individuals of different genders face systemic discrimination and segregation. In the context of Iran, there has been international concern about laws and practices that limit women's rights, including the issue of hijab, restriction on movement, limitation on participation in certain activities. So what I would like to do now is just briefly talk about some areas in which women are particularly discriminated and oppressed. And then I would like to end with two instances of most powerful woman resistance. As you might know, legal discriminations against women in areas like family laws is really really stark. For example, polygamy is legally allowed for men, and the legal age of marriage for girls is relatively low. The issue of dress code, it's true that we talk about women who are politically active, but our societies are so constructed that only by being a woman, you are at the risk of, at least in a state in Iran, you are at the risk of death only because you are a woman. And you have to apply the specific codes of conduct, especially in the issue of compulsory hijab. Otherwise, you are at the risk of death. And I think this is what this was one issue that really ignited the revolution after the state murder of Jina, that this was a situation that basically every single woman could have empathy with, like unless you're regime affiliated, that would be a different issue. But if you're like normal woman and you want to be in the public space the way you want, and not even without hijab, but with a bit of a like having your headscarf a bit differently, then you are exposed to the police brutality and potential death. And this was something that I think united many women in Iran. Back to the issue of bodily autonomy that is increasingly limited in Iran these days, as a part of the state effort to prevent abortions, which would be a way of women to have control over their own bodies. One clinic and several doctors' offices in different cities were shut down. Iranian authorities, including the paramilitia and Justice Department and the police, identify and seal these clinics. Even a volunteer group called Nafas, which means life, also known as anti-abortion patrols, has been formed to prevent abortion. Abortions are generally illegal in Iran, except in cases of like danger to the life of the mother. But recently, the enforcement of much stricter laws are done by the state. I just jump over this. I will get back to state oppression of the women who are politically active, so politics in its very broad term. Execution of women, so capital punishment itself is
Is it just my connection or?
intrinsic to this structure. Tells us a very sad story. In the year 2022, around the world, 24 women were executed. 16 of them were in Iran, and these cases include cases of women defending themselves due to lack of divorce rights, cultural norms, and domestic violence intersected. So if you try to defend yourself when you are raped, and you end up being dead, then you become a hero. And this is, I think, this many cases of suicide is also state violence against women. Cases when women are envisaged to have taken their own lives is actually an outcome of this structure that leaves them no way out. In 2020, she basically turned into a hero because she defended her honor by killing herself. And then the perpetrator faced no consequences. I think this is important to mention that either in the case of death penalty or in cases of such suicides, which also happened very tragically, frequently after the imprisoned, especially youngsters of Genjian Azadi Revolution were released from prison, they committed suicide. One very famous case is Yalda Ağafazli, and she said that I was tortured, but I never said that I regret what I did. So she stood by her protest, but then days after she was released, although she had a very supporting family, she committed suicide. And I don't think anybody is here to blame other than the Islamic State in Iran. I think I would just end now, and then we can have more detailed understanding of the situation in questions and answers maybe later. I will end with two moments of resistance, which I find really inspiring. One unfolded within the confines of Tehran Evin prison, where female political prisoners bravely confronted high-ranking judiciary officials during their visit. These were officials who had given death verdicts to other protesters, like Mohammad Mehdi Karami, who was a very young person who was executed because of his participation in the protest, or Mohammad Hosseini. And these women shouted the names of these martyrs of the revolution. They also chanted death to the dictator, death to the Islamic Republic, woman, life, freedom, and courageously expressed their anger and rejection against the suppression of people, imprisonment of dissidents, torture, and executions. And this is happening in the context of a prison. So they obviously, the women who protested have suffered more consequences. They were their right to having telephone conversation with their family members was cut. In the case of a friend of mine, Sarbanaz Ahmadi, she was not given the right to hand in what she wrote or translated in the prison to her family. Her access to books were cut. So the rights that a normal in prison, what would a normal prison mean? But a prisoner would have in a normal situation was cut. So, but this is the price that they paid so that they would chant death to the dictator at the face of these judges who wanted to visit the prison. And in another case, a woman called Roya Heshmati from Saneh in Rojbîn, she wrote on her social media account that she was recently flogged 74 times for refusing to wear the compulsory hijab, and she has become a symbol of unwavering resistance among Iranian women. Despite the cruel lashes administered to her body, Heshmati's defiance resonated beyond the confine of her personal suffering. Because many women have identified this is not a new practice. Like this, flogging has been the practice since the 1980s, like since the beginning of the revolution, basically, not only for political prisoners, but also if you were simply a woman who was arrested in a party with family or friends. So a woman's body has always been targeted under the Islamic regime, but now it has turned into into the temple of resistance. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mahtab, for your contribution about the struggles of women against the Islamic regime in Iran. I think it really highlights how the state controls and criminalizes women only based on their gender, and that especially during uprisings and conflicts, women are targeted in a very particular way by the state. As we know, 2023 was a year full of conflict and wars in many countries. And since October, the eyes of the whole world have been especially on Gaza. Over 20,000 people have already been killed in Israel's war against the Palestinian people. Hospitals and schools are being destroyed. There is hunger, disease, violence, and suffering. There is no more security. And as in any war, this is especially true for women, children, and vulnerable groups. Fida, can you tell us more about why it is important for feminists to condemn the war in Gaza and to take action for the liberation of Palestine? How does this war affect women?
Yeah, first of all, thank you for giving us the space to speak about everything happening around us from like our perspective as women, as feminists. I would like to start with like the title of this meeting today about state violence and how the world views state violence against women when it's committed by the state, but when it's committed, like they overlook that. They don't pay a lot of attention to that. They do not shed light of that on that when it is committed by states, by armies, by like official entities, but they love to shed light on intimate partner violence. They love to say gender-based violence, but when it comes to states committing gender-based violence, they do not pay a lot of attention of that, and that tells us more about how even combating violence against women can be used. Like it is very selective. The issues that the states want to address, their media wants to address, everything is very selective. Regarding what's happening in Gaza, like today is the 3 months since the aggression started on Gaza, and we have been saying since the first week of when the Israeli army started bombing Gaza, we want an immediate ceasefire. And now we are 49 days later, and the Israeli army is still bombing Gaza from north to south nonstop, with the support of the EU, the United States, Canada, Britain, and all of Western countries. And of course, the Arabic countries are not doing much about that either. Actually, like some countries, like Egypt, they are complicit in the genocide that's happening in Gaza. Why we should let's say our movements should be concerned about what's happening in Gaza. For me, as a Palestinian from Gaza, that's no question. But I think the liberation as a value should concern us all. So what's happening to the like the assassination of the 3 comrades in Paris, it does affect me personally. It's not far away from me. Like states export violence, and the very same states actually they collaborate together. But why it concerns me, that I want more people to be networking, connecting, fighting together, organizing together, because I truly believe that our fight is one fight, despite borders. Like the violence itself that comes from the system from above it comes in different forms, and it does manifest itself differently in Palestine, differently in Kurdistan, differently in Iran, differently, but it comes from the very same source. And we experience it differently, but the same way that the states get together, they explore, like they communicate like secret information, how the intelligence services collaborate together. We should do the same in terms of solidarity and fighting together. And I believe, like, Palestine, the liberation of Palestine is a feminist issue. Opposing militarization is a feminist issue. It's just like it's no question, like it's feminism is a political, it's not just like a women's rights movement or something. It's like a political movement in its core. It's about liberation of us all, of the society as a whole. That's why it should concern us. And even if we want to say why it should concern like women, let's say, yeah, like 90 days. First of all, it didn't start on the 7th of October, but even if we want to start like from the 7th of October, we have the updated information. It's like, it's not even 20,000 people killed, it's 30,000 today. These are the numbers that we know of. 12,000 children and 7,000 women. When I talk to my friends, like in Gaza, like basic things, they cannot shower their hair, like their hair since 4 weeks or even more. And some of them tell me we started cutting our hair to avoid shower. They cannot even shower. And this reminded me actually, like, with cutting hair and the solidarity with the movement in Iran, and a lot of things in common, but it does manifest itself differently. Like pregnant women nowadays in Gaza give birth in very horrible circumstances, and many of them are getting their uterus just like surgically taken off the body because they cannot have any treatment after giving birth. A lot of babies are dying. We are talking about like women being targeted and killed on the streets by snipers. And I have no idea how this should not be like concerning us all, not because it's like women being targeted, just like how could 30,000 people get brutally killed via hunger, thirst, missiles, tanks, and direct fire, and that such a military, such an entity can get away with that. I mean, this is what should concern us all. At the beginning, it was mentioned that 11 years after the assassination of our 3 comrades in Paris, and we still demand accountability. We still demand justice. This feeling that the perpetrators can get away with it, it's a very heavy feeling. That's what we are feeling right now in Gaza as women. But what hurts the most is the amount of propaganda. Yeah, if we want to see how they use women's rights, like Israel as a state, it does a lot of pink washing. It does a lot of greenwashing. They use like the queer movement to pink wash their army. We saw like the rainbow flags being raised in Gaza. We see like those horrible TikTok videos of women soldiers in the Israeli army making fun of Palestinian women being murdered in Gaza. And we see how even like women, people who identify as women, are being even used to justify the genocide. Not only that, at the beginning, that a lot of accusations came that later they were proved to be not true, but those accusations were anyway just like amplified in the media at the beginning. I mean, the first 2 weeks of October, after October 7th, on every media, let's say mainstream corporate media platform, the amount of lies that were like being fed to the people to like make the public consent to the genocide in Gaza was just like beyond imagination. How could that be true? Like the BBC, the CNN, repeating one lie after another and using women's rights till a few weeks ago, using some rape allegation that were again proved like clueless, like they have no profound, like there is basically no proof that those allegations happened, like the same with the 40 beheaded babies and the numbers of people who were killed and all of those things. And this should alarm us, like how do they use the language that we use to defend our rights, let's say the feminist movements, the women's rights, how they use those terms and use it for their own genocidal propaganda. It should just alarm us all. Also, the racist tropes that they are using from day one, even that the barbaric Palestinians that attacked. It is the very same language that was used in Algeria by the French, in the US against the Black movement, the Black liberation movement. Some of those stories or lies that we are hearing, it's just like an ABC textbook of colonial propaganda that keeps repeating itself. So anyone who is anti-colonial in their like being anti-colonial is the core of their political activism or work, should be concerned with what is happening in Gaza at the moment. But if I want to talk about what women are experiencing, first of all, they are being killed, not because they are women, because they are Palestinian. So we have 7,000 women at least were killed just because they are Palestinian from Gaza. If we want to talk about everyday violence like this, aggression, like missiles hitting houses, like the sister of my sister-in-law was bombed with her baby and they stayed under the rubble for 4 days, and her mom was crying day and night that she wants to go and sleep on top of the bombed house because she does not want to leave her daughter alone. Like women fleeing from the north to the central Gaza in tents to schools, and then fleeing again and again. They have to take care of the kids. They have to make sure that they have bread, and then the border is closed. There is no cash flow in Gaza. There is no food entering. Very small amounts of goods, not even goods, like of humanitarian aid is entering Gaza. That is not even enough for 1% of the population at the moment. I have to say that despite the mobilizations on the streets all during the last 3 months, the genocide in Gaza did not stop. And we should just think why. Like, if we were able to mobilize worldwide, demanding a ceasefire to stop the genocide in Gaza, and we failed, it says a lot about how the system, how the governments are well organized, how strong they are. And it should push us more to organize together as grassroots movements, as liberation movements, and to see what can we do, actually, not only for Gaza, for all of us. Because what we see happening in Gaza at the moment, it's going to have effect on all of us worldwide. It's not going to stop there. It did not begin there, and it's not going to stop there. All these tactics that they are being used there, they're going to be used somewhere else. Those drones that are assassinating women who are trying to get water are being used somewhere else. Like I had a meeting a few months ago, and actually a Kurdish comrade said that the Turkish army is using the drones increasingly to target women. And the same thing is now happening mainly in northern Gaza, when they see someone that is delivering aid or helping their neighbors or trying to build a social network. It means like this person is helping or helping people to stay steadfast in that area, and they are being targeted on purpose. We see like a lot of activist women who were very active in the agriculture field and also in women's rights. They were targeted in like the schools. They were targeted when they were trying to deliver aid. And it is the same thing, like they are trying to target women who are helping the rest of the population at the moment, and who could help after the genocide stops. So they are not only thinking on terms of what now, but also the future, and that should concern us all. Like Gaza is at the moment unfit for human living. Like really, they like a UN report that was published in 2012 said that Gaza is not fit for human living at the moment. And I say, like, what about now? Like, no houses at all. My hometown does not exist anymore in the north. No water. The soil is full of poison. I don't know how many people are injured at the moment. I think around 70,000. We have 115 journalists killed, 1,900,000 people displaced, more than 80,000 houses completely destroyed. We are talking about families who have no place to go back to, even if the war stops. And on top of that, we don't have any functioning hospitals at the moment, except for 2 hospitals that are not that big even in the south, and those hospitals cannot provide medical care, not even for the injured, but even for the sick. Like I mean, every parent knows how hard it is if their baby has a fever, where to go, which doctor. Like if those things happen in Gaza, there is a possibility that the child could die from the fever because no medication and no medical treatment could be provided. I've been like really invested a lot in organizing some help for mainly women who are about to give birth or who just gave birth, and it is just not possible. It's like I everything I see, I hear from there, it is just like beyond anything I could imagine. And I say this as someone who survived 3 wars on Gaza and several ground invasions. But the level of destruction, of brutality, of targeting life in all of its forms could concern us all, because if we imagine or dream of a better world, like a better future for us all, we should start from there. We cannot have a bright future if we allow this killing machine to continue like that. I mean, it makes me like a little bit frustrated that it continues, to be honest, because what's happening to women and children. I mean, there is a lot of focus on women and children. Like they even say 30,000 killed, of them women and children, but all of those lives are sacred, all of them. Like men's lives in Gaza are not less important than women's lives in Gaza, because they are our fathers, brothers, siblings, neighbors, and actually they are the ones that are now trying also to get food and make sure that the kids and everyone is eating. But what bothers me a lot, that everything is broadcasted 3D live, and the world is just letting that go on, and everything we do is still not enough. So it is kind of makes me frustrated, but at the same time pushes me to say, how can we all work together as like feminist, anti-colonial, anti-militarism movements? How can we build such a strong solidarity network that we can work together to make sure that I mean, none of us can be free unless all of us is free. This is how I see it. Like it concerns me what happens in Kurdistan. It concerns me what happens in Chile. It concerns me a lot what's happening in Sudan, the genocide in Sudan. It concerns me the genocide in Congo. And the last thing that I want to end with, like, if we look who is committing those genocides, or who are like fueling with military aid, arms, money, finance, we will always find the very same states trying to destroy other countries, or like movements for their own interest. It could be resources, gold, I don't know what, diamond, or just like geopolitical interests in the area, or just smashing a liberation movement, because liberation movements, it's like a domino effect. One comes here and then it's contagious. So that's why we work. We should like fight together. We should struggle together, and solidarity should be like an action beyond the word itself, solidarity, because we cannot survive unless we survive together. There is no future if our Kurdish comrades still like face this brutality, if Sudanese women are still being like raped by the militia, if the people of Congo are still not free from those neo-colonial liberal powers trying to control their lives. Yeah. I don't know, if you have any questions, just let me know in the YouTube chat. Thank you.
Thanks, Fida. I think it is incredibly important as feminists and as liberation movements to take a clear stance on this war and the suffering of the Palestinian people, not only as part of feminist solidarity, but also as humans. International solidarity is more important than ever, and it is important to connect these struggles and fight for better days and for the liberation of all oppressed peoples. Thanks again for joining us and for sharing with us your perspective. I hope we will see days of hope, freedom, and peace during our lifetimes. Before we continue, I just want to note that you can ask, as viewers, as participants, you can ask your questions in the YouTube chat if you have any questions to any of our speakers. If not, I will just check if we already have. Okay, no questions so far. Then I would like to welcome Soreti, who is an Oromo activist and also a poet, storyteller, and journalist. Thanks again for joining us today. We are interested in your perspective as well. regarding the question how patriarchal violence and state violence or oppression are connected in your context, in your struggle. And what is your perspective about combating systematic violence against women and patriarchal violence? Soreti, are you still here? I can't see you at the moment. Okay, there seems to be no connection. But if you have questions, you can ask them now. And maybe Soreti will join us in a few minutes. And also to the speakers, if you have questions to each other, you can ask them, of course. Or any comments. Or anything you want to add to what other speakers said.
I just wanted to, you hear me, right?
Yes.
Okay. I just wanted to add to what Fida said, which is really moving, like unbelievable situations. And as she said, it's extreme, it's in front of our eyes, and it's not like also what is happening in Rojava. We know that it is happening, and we know that the states like Turkey try to benefit and just use the propaganda. They don't really care about the Palestinian cause. They just want because there is this demand from the people, also the Islamic Republic, the regime in Iran. I don't think that they care about Palestinian lives or their right to self-determination. All these states, as Fida also said, these states cooperate each other to oppress people of their lands, to oppress the nations that live on that land, and then it just comes down to people as limited access to facilities, resources as we have. It just comes down to us and our solidarities, and the power of organization to raise our voice for Palestine, for Kurdistan, for any oppressed people who want and demand our solidarity. But it's not just that they want our solidarity, it's our humanity. It's a test, I think, especially the case of these two colonized lands is a test for our humanity, how much we understand this essence of being human and being connected to each other and being this one body that suffers in different geographies. But at the end of the day, also as Fida said, feminism is not about women's rights. It's about really putting this system upside down. Everything is really, really wrong. What I said about the case of capital punishment, for example, it's an absolutely a feminist issue, and these are issues. Colonialism, abolitionist movements, they are things that we have to mobilize around, and we have to come together and as urgently as possible end these genocides, who, among others, have women as their victims. But it is, again, this narrative of just Palestinian women and children deserve being mourned when they die. So this racist narrative that leaves Palestinian men as invaders, as quote unquote terrorists, and the same goes with Kurdistan or with any colonized nation that is somehow demonized through the media. So we have to always be careful with this women and children discourse. But we have. I think these two cases of these colonized nations are where our power of coming together and organizing and showing feminist solidarity internationally really mattered. Thank you for powerful words, both Nilüfer and Fida.
Thank you, Mahtab, for your words. I think it wrapped up very well some of the points that were discussed today. Are there any other comments by Nilüfer or Fida?
Well, I fully agree with Mehtap. I think this is the right time to find the common ground between the women of Palestine, in Iran, I would say the whole Middle Eastern region, because it seems that the war between Israel and Hamas is spreading to our region, and it seems it will keep us busy for a long time. That's why I say I think we should create with our own identities as women, not just because we are affected by wars, but to show that we are able as women, as organized women or creating our own networks and show that alternative is possible, that we are not going to play the game, the game which they are brainwashing through nationalism, religiousness, whatever they're using as arguments for the war. I think it's our time to take the right of self-determination as women. We have the power. The Palestinian women have been fighting for long centuries. They have experiences, and also in Iran, in Balochistan, in Ahwaz region, amongst Azari women in Iran, and I would say I would include also women in Iraq, in Syria, in Libya. So I think the destiny of this region, the region of Middle East, which is again becoming center of war, and so it seems that patriarchy and the man-led policy doesn't help the region. It's creating chaos, brutality, war, militarism, aggression, and that's why I think now it's our turn as women to come together and to say no to all of that. That's why I think we should create as soon as possible networks of women for peace of Middle East. And because if we are not organized, the international solidarity can't make any change. So we have to decide for a change. We, the women from the region itself. And I think if we can achieve this, and then the increase of the international solidarity, which we have seen in the last 2 months, which I welcome, because it's showing us that not just the states, but the peoples have also something to say, and they say clear no to war, whether people in UK, in all European countries, in the US, in Latin America. This is the good ground. Now there's a need that we becoming active organizers of peace from the perspective of women. And when we bring together our experiences, we women from the very ancient region of the world, the Middle East, I think we can make a change which affect the global search for a hegemony or controlling the whole world, the whole planet. So I think this last war between Israel and Hamas should urge us that we should come together. So in this, I fully agree with the final aspects which have been raised by Mehtap, and I felt that also Fida is on the right way to say we need each other, and I think we should create a new sisterhood of Middle East for peace.
Thanks, Nilüfer. Thanks everybody for your contributions and for sharing your knowledge with us. So far there are no questions in the YouTube chat, and also there seems to be a problem with Soreti's connection. I tried to reach her, but unfortunately there is no connection at the moment. Maybe she's able to join in a few minutes and we will hear her speech as well. In the meantime, maybe I want to ask one more questions to the speakers. In a few sentences, what would you say is the most essential thing? I mean, some of you said it already, organizing and international solidarity. But what would you say in a few sentences is essential to combat patriarchal state violence? And are there any instances or examples of solidarity or struggles that gave you hope or that inspired you?
I would go ahead. I would say that like there is no liberation if not one if not all of us are free, and this includes like women in Palestine. So a few years ago we had a new women movement called Talat, and the slogan says that Palestine cannot free if women are not free. Basically, it goes hand in hand with the liberation of us as a community, as a whole, from colonialism. So this is like what motivates me to combat violence, racism in all its forms, understand the roots and fight it all. And we cannot be free if women and all oppressed groups are not free. What we need the most, I would say, organizing and political education. Political education is so important, and we need a lot of that, and organizing together, and we need each other. Yeah.
Thank you, Fida. Any other comments by the speakers? If not, there is a question in the chat to all the speakers. Can you speak about the situation of political prisoners in your context? Does anybody want to answer this question?
I mean,
Can you repeat again?
Sorry?
Can you read the question again, please?
Yes, sure. The question is, can you speak about the situation of political prisoners in your context? Fida, I think you wanted to reply to that.
Yeah. I mean, in terms of political prisoners, we have a lot of political prisoners in Israeli jails. I mean, some, like in the recent months, they abducted a lot of people from Gaza, mostly civilians, women and men, and actually a few children. It was like their fate was unknown. I'm just talking about the recent 3 months, and it's only a few days ago that we got the names of women who were kidnapped in Gaza, and now they are currently detained in Israeli prisons. Some of them with their kids, and one of them is like 83 years old. But in general, we have Israel has many prisons across Palestine, and they keep a lot of children, women, and men inside these prisons. Some of them are on administrative detention. It means they have no case in front of the court. They are just like being imprisoned without any reason. Some of the prisoners were freed recently, and a few prisoners exchanged like between Gaza and Israel. I mean, after the 7th of October, it's getting way bad for the political prisoners inside the Israeli jails. We saw a few kids coming with broken arms. They report of torture. A few men, political prisoners, reported of rape and sexual harassment in Negev prison that also the media did not say anything about. Yeah, so it is more of torture centers these days, the Israeli prisons where our political prisoners are being abducted and detained. Yeah.
I would like to also say a few words about the situation in Iran. Yeah, there is all these, I would dare to say there is really no justice. So what we call prisoner are in many cases just hostages, as is the case in many cases in Palestine and Kurdistan. I know is also like they take many family members of a prisoner or an activist so that they would have to like hand themselves in. In Iran, we know that the number we know is like 500 political prisoners who are women of different ages, and most of them were like arrested in the context of Zinjan Azadi revolution. And then there is like the same disparity and stratification that there is in the society, there is also among prisoners. So if you are a political prisoner in Tehran, and then you have more access, then the media has a bit of a more focus on you. There is a bit more coverage, and the cases of assault and torture are a bit more publicized, let's say. But we have many cases of executions of prisoners whose identity we only learned later in provinces like Baluchistan, like Al-Ahwaz, where the population there is already demonized by the state narrative, by the nationalist narrative, and it is much more difficult to like track this nationalist narrative and make the voices of these already marginalized prisoners a bit more heard. But also, on the other hand, there is so much, as in the cases that I mentioned, there is resistance, there is empowering and powerful voices that come out of the prison. But there are, and these are voices that we hear, and there are innumerable voices that we hardly hear because the media is not really interested in the less advantaged and less well-known people who are paying very high prices. Just yesterday, there were 3 activists who altogether were convicted of 45 years imprisonment. There is this woman who only seeks justice for her family members, her brothers and sisters, who were murdered during the 1980s. And she was already convicted to 13 years in prison. And now we learned that she was convicted to 3 more years. And then there is the only political prisoner, woman political prisoner in Iran, Zainab Jalalian, who is convicted to life term in prison. and she was basically just a political activist. She was not involved in any kind of a struggles that would obviously no opposing no state deserved such a punishment. But and then for the case of Zeynep Cenal-Uyan, she is exiled from one prison to another. So in the past couple of years, she has been moved to states, to cities where she is Kurdish, so she doesn't really feel comfortable, and is not like it's a punishment for her to be moved from one city to another. And it has been many years that her mother hasn't seen her, and her mother speaks only Kurdish. So it doesn't even make sense, because they wouldn't allow you in a prison visit to talk to your parents in any other languages other than Persian. So the situation of political prisoners in Iran, I would say, is complicated on many fronts, but it is always an issue that there are many cases that we don't hear about unless they are given like the death penalty, or they are lucky enough that they have some well-known activists in prison with them, so they start writing or publicizing about their friend in prison, their inmate. Yeah, I think I hope that I have answered your question.
Thank you, Mahtab and Fida. You underlined some very important aspects concerning the political prisoners. We must not forget about them and their resistances and repressions they face, which of course is also part of state violence. Unfortunately, Nilüfer already had to leave, and Soreti has not returned to the meeting. So I would say I would just ask the last questions, read the last questions that have been asked in the chat, and then we can finalize today's event. There is another question in the chat. What do you think should be done about the use of new war and surveillance technologies in the region, especially artificial intelligence and drone warfare? Feminist movements should do more popular education on these issues to help defend ourselves and our struggles collectively. Is there anything you want to say concerning this question? Mahtab or Fida?
This is a very important question. It's not only like the artificial intelligence and drone warfare, but yeah, we should focus on that at the moment, because it is the trend. It is what is being like developed in the Silicon Valley and then exported in our countries to kill us. And when I read such questions, I think about like a new drone that the Israeli army is using in Gaza, and it looks so dystopian. Like I really urge everyone who hears this, that go and Google it. It's called the quadcopter. This is how we call it in Arabic, and it is basically a drone with a machine gun that they fly it, and it starts firing at the people on the streets or inside the schools. And when you see that, you think this is so dystopian. This cannot be true. Just like something post-apocalyptic. Like it is just like scary, horrific what they made of technology. So we should of course critically approach artificial intelligence, the positive side and the negative side, and pay attention how in all these security conferences in Germany, in United Arab Emirates, they are talking about artificial intelligence it is a new way, a new modern fast way of killing us all, the way those states are using that. So we should approach it very critically, the question of like, yeah, technology and all those things. And there are a few organizations that are working on that. I saw a few reports from Access Now, Hamla, a Palestinian organization, talking about internet, IT, artificial intelligence, and the modern warfare, and how could we, how can we address that issue? The other thing why it is like so personal to me, those things, because those weapons, like our bodies as Gazans in Palestine, are the testing grounds for these weapons. So they see how good these weapons, how good is this artificial intelligence in killing, and then the Israeli army or the states that are providing the Israeli army with these weapons start like sailing to other dictatorships, to other countries that could use the very same weapons. Again, that's why it should concern us all, the kind of weapons they use on us. And you see how the sales are skyrocketing, the arm deals are skyrocketing, and all of that. So this is something that should concern us all, definitely.
Mahtab, is there anything you want to add to the last questions? Okay, you have to leave. That's fine. We also need to finish the event soon because of the limited time that we have. Unfortunately, we couldn't hear Soriti's contribution, but I hope there will be another occasion for that. And I would like to thank again all the speakers for sharing their experiences. And if there is no other comment by you, Fida, you are the last speaker left. I would like to thank, on behalf of the Kurdish Women's Peace Office, Jenny, for your participation today and for sharing your experiences, your struggles, and for underlining the importance of organizing and of international solidarity. Thanks for your availability despite everything that is going on at the moment. Your perspectives are incredibly important, and we are very honored to have had such inspiring speakers who shared their knowledge with us. I hope we get to meet each other very soon on other occasions, on the streets, at protests. I wish you success with everything you do in your liberation struggles. And yeah, thanks for everybody contributing to this event today and who participated today. Have a good evening and see you soon.
Thank you. Goodbye.
Goodbye. Thank you for participating. Have a good evening.